Or is it to put out education? Take care.
I think it's by certification.
Well,
Actually,
Hey. And Ryan, this one's yours. You're moderating this one.
Ready to go.
All right. You are now host, so you can give people sharing, and you can make co-hosts or whatever if you need. So you're good. Recording is automatic, so it's actually already recording, and it'll just end when you hit end.
Cool.
Should be good. All right.
Giddy up.
You're good. I'll be back.
Okay.
Maybe.
Hello, everyone.
How are we doing today?
Good, good. How are you, Ryan?
Hanging tough. We've got like
There's a lot.
halfway whiteout blizzard conditions and 25 to 30 mile an hour winds here today. I don't think it's quite as
Wow.
bad as where Chris is today, but I'm just glad my internet's on. When I woke up this morning, all like half of the ISPs were down up here, but we've held in today, so I'm glad.
Yeah, I'm waiting for power or internet to go out.
At campus, our campuses are closed, but there were power blips all over. So there's things that aren't working and people over there trying to deal with it.
You have a vehicle that's equipped for that, Ryan?
Yeah, I can get to the grocery store if I have to, but I'm not plowing any snow. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
How's everybody doing?
There's Raj. What's up, Raj?
Good. That was a great keynote this morning. You guys did great.
All highly prepared as usual. And I see Chi. Give it a couple minutes for people to come in.
Yeah, the
Honorable
sessions
Steve
this morning have been
Greenblatt
great.
is here.
Hey, Raj, are you doing any other sessions?
Not that I'm aware of. No, this is the
Nothing-
only one that I'm
Nothing you've
scheduled
been
for.
volunteered for with yet? All right.
Yeah, but you know, I'm
Voluntold.
always happy to help. Yeah, voluntold. Yeah, I'm always happy to help and share. You know, it's like anything we can do.
Am I missing? I don't see Gary.
He was in the main lobby. I saw him
Yeah.
earlier, so maybe he got lost somewhere between here and there.
More people are coming.
Mhm. We'll give it a couple more minutes. People to come in. We
I've
were
got
talking
about,
about
I've got about 40 or 50 slides here to go through. Do you think that'll be enough?
that for the first half. I think that'll
Yeah.
probably get us through about halfway.
I used to do
I
that
agree.
at InfoComm. I would put up my slide deck and I would renumber them at the bottom. So it would say like 1 of like 462.
Yeah.
People would be like, what the hell?
That's funny.
one word per slide.
One year I did a bunch of presentations where I had a bunch of junk slides that I deliberately skipped through, and I had it automated to run through at 1/10 of a second each, and they would just blast through about 100 of them. I pulled down a whole bunch of like charts and stuff from various scientific papers and just threw them in there. It's like, we're not going to get into all this, but
Nice.
Super detailed line graphs and stuff. That This is all just evidence to help prove my point. Well, we won't look at them though.
I used to also start presentations with the phrasing something like, over the next 4 hours, and then people would like look at their
Yeah.
watch. Cracks me up.
Like, really? 4 hours? Like, it's only 4 hours. Although I have done presentations with Chris that last all day.
That wasn't all
It's,
day, so yeah, why
it's
not?
all day.
It's possible. We can do it.
It's possible. I think Chris and Larry actually. Yeah, that was fun day. I'm so surprised we filled it up though. It was a long day.
We had too much. We had to condense that one.
Well, maybe Gary will join us. We'll see.
I wonder if he's over in the other. He was in the
other thing. Yeah.
lobby area.
In the main lobby,
See, if it was a real conference, someone would stick their head out the door and yell for him.
Yeah, how do you yell in Zoom?
I know within the Zoom a webinar, there needs to be like a DM all year.
I was just looking for that. Is there a way to send something to somebody who's in another room?
Everybody.
We should have a DM feature for people who are part of the event. Robert, does that work? I've never tried it. That's why, maybe.
That's the best word in technology, right? It should.
Should
work.
It's what the
Supposed
specs
to.
say.
Yeah, exactly.
According to the manual, it says this. So
Oh yeah, that video resolution is under the bandwidth. It
There
should
he
work
is.
just fine.
There he is.
Barry was taking a late lunch.
Late lunch. We're on Eastern Standard Time.
Oh yeah.
It's a late breakfast.
All
Apologies.
right, you guys ready to get started?
I'm getting breakfast.
Well, welcome everybody. This is Breakout, very cleverly entitled "Controlling Your Future: Challenges and Opportunities." Did I get that right? I think that's what we said we
agreed
were going to
upon,
call
yeah.
it. And we've got a panel of people here to talk about kind of what are the challenges and opportunities with the future of control and kind of the context of why that's an important thing today. So I'll run down the list and have them each introduce themselves to you. And if you want to, drag them to the top of your screen as they do, that way you can figure out who here is supposed to be getting our attention. So first, why don't we start with the Honorable Chris Decter?
Dishonorable, thank you very much. My name is Chris Decter. I'm the manager of instructional technology at the University of Wyoming, where it is very cold and snowy right now.
And the Honorable Gary Cummins.
Hi, manager of learning space design at Indiana University, where oddly it's 70 degrees, no joke.
Nice. And Mr. Chi.
Hi, my name is Chi. I'm the AV IT Solutions Architect with US.
And finally, Raj, who I think probably, if you don't know Raj already, I mean, come on.
Thank you for that, Ryan. Hey everyone, I'm Brad Singh. I'm with USC and I manage the design and engineering team here at USC. And it's cooler today than normal, but not cold yet.
Well, thank you for joining us. I think there's actually a couple of different answers and plans represented in this panel on what people are actually doing in terms of the future of control. But I think when we start with this following question for everybody, we have a panel on the future of control. Why is that something that is important for us to talk about right now? What is there a problem that we're trying to deal with, or what's the context?
Yeah, I think, and I can kick it off. I mean, future of control, especially control systems in any space, it's very important because it's in the AV world, especially, it's the one point of contact that the customers, which could be in our case, faculty and students, have with the AV system, right? Because it's always, I believe, in the idea in AV, when you're designing something, it's what can you touch, see, and hear and feel. And the only part that involves physical contact is the control system. So it's super critical. And as we all know, what's been happening, and we're aware because we're experiencing it right now, is issues with regards to, procurement of products or changes, changes with regards to how we approach control when you look at, whether it's designed for collaboration, hybrid, what we're doing right here, what I'm saying, in person. One thing that doesn't change is the pane of glass that's there. But the question becomes, how do we make that pane of glass do different things? And can we even get that pane of glass right now, or the control processor? So that's been some of the challenges that I've seen, and we can go a lot of different ways with that, with the panel here and kind of talk about that. And I don't know if anybody else in the panelists wants to kind of chime in on that as well too.
Sorry, Raj, I wasn't listening. I kid. Control systems being paramount to what we do. Though Raj, you did use the phrase pane of glass. I know it's cool, and we use touchscreens, but button panels are the new touch panel.
Yeah.
Over the last 2 years, it's been this interesting dichotomy of increased need for technologies, presentation and conferencing technologies in a lot of spaces, and yet decreased availability in a lot of them. So, I can only speak from my experience, and I'll let the others speak to theirs. But I inherited a campus of 300 plus rooms that were dialed in with one particular manufacturer who is having trouble shipping stuff. Now, I will also admit that the way those spaces were set up did not leverage all the capabilities of those systems. And so it was easier to cut that cord and say, look, there's a lot of other opportunities and things out there. In addition, we get, added benefits of looking at different ecosystems and what that brings, because the days of the all-in-one giant box are dead. The days of 16 by 16 and 32 by 32 matrix switchers in every room in your business school are dead. So it's a brave new world. So look at this as an opportunity of like, hey, this is, especially because there's a lot of funding still flying around. What can we do to modernize, streamline, and look at new approaches to presentation and classroom systems? And if that means leveraging a new ecosystem, so be it. It's going to be something you have to do at some point. So now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, hey, why not?
Yeah, I agree, Chris. We were standardized on a normal control system, and started to integrate more DSPs and audio from another manufacturer. So at some point we decided to cut the cord and try control with this other product, and we had 1,000 rooms on server-based monitoring and management. So it was hard. It was hard to officially rip that Band-Aid off and say, okay, we're gonna try something new. And it all, just like Raj said, it came from just the ability to get product. That was the deciding factor of ripping it off. I think we just don't have a choice. We have to move forward. So so same as Chris.
Yeah, I want to share a little bit from our experience. So we've been using virtual control, which is not a physical controller, it's a software based. And then during the pandemic, we added a few features to allow us to integrate with other software applications, such as Zoom Room. And also we are able to expand our control interface, like using occupancy sensor, voice control. So that's we are doing the pandemic to kind of give us opportunity to scale more features in by our controller.
So
yeah, and go ahead. Sorry, Ryan.
I was just going to ask, and please, Raj, if this is the kind of for context, if there are people here that have been in the place where they've had sort of room by room control boxes and they can't get those, or they're looking to make a change. Chris mentioned moving ecosystems. Cheese already brought up server-based control. So like, what if people haven't looked through, what are you guys talking about then in making a change on this? Like, what are the options that you guys have looked at and chosen, and why did you go down that road?
Yeah, and I would like to add to Ryan's question too, one thing. So when he brought up options, one of the things that we want to look at and talk about, traditionally when you look at control, the conversation was always configuration versus programming, right? Those were the two big topics. Now control is, you have physical control processor versus virtual control processor. So that's another two add to that mix right now. There's two more things that have been added in the past couple of years. Now there is traditional control from a traditional control manufacturer versus UC control, things like Zoom panels or team panels, right, that are there. So there's a lot of different opportunities and options that are out there, and availability plays a big role. And, you know, and I'm sure all of you can speak to that as well too. I mean, to Chief's point, I mean, we were a traditional push button control panel campus for all the spaces. We transitioned to a touch screen or a touch panel option with virtual controller. And there were a lot of challenges with that. I mean, you know, that were associated with it in terms of training, upskilling, education, programming, bring that into the equation. But, you know, we're interested in hearing in terms of what were some of the, to Ryan's question, like what are some of the other options that you guys are looking at right now and exploring and seeing and circumventing those issues that you're facing right now?
I can speak from my perspective that we went exclusively to see you see me based rooms with 7 IR remotes on the table, and it's worked great.
Yeah,
Kidding, don't do that. We've all found those rooms on
Yeah.
campus where that's what's going on. But Raj, you raised an excellent point there, that looking at a lot of these kind of UCC systems have really taken over as what people are using as their primary portal. Now, the irony is, and I think this is probably true for a lot of people on this call and those listening in, the AV team doesn't always control that compute device, as the parlance states these days. I get $50 every time I say that. The same team doesn't drive those PCs. So that's like the most critical component of the space, and yet that's the one that we don't really have any control over, which just adds to a challenge. So that just means we have to make our systems that much more compatible, capable, etc. So, you know, I'll be honest. We're moving from Crestron to QSC. That was our lift, and I've deployed several rooms with that already. Now we just deployed a whole bunch over the winter break. Haven't got a single ticket from those rooms. The most important thing to consider, and I keep bringing this up to my leadership as well, is that while we on this call have our own preferences, have our own requirements, have our own things that we consider when looking at different control systems, the end users don't care. They want to go in, they want to teach their class. They want to teach their physics class, their history class, their linguistics class. They want the students who are remote or the students in the room to be able to see and hear and participate. There's, 25, 30 different ways to do that in any given space. So finding something like that works and provides them a common experience. So they walk from a room that has an Extron button panel, they walk down the hall to a room that has a Crestron touch panel, and they go across the campus to one that has a QSC touch panel. They don't care. It works. So being intentional and holistic is important. From the support standpoint, yeah, there is a lift to move from one system to another. People have to learn new tools. Technicians have to get comfortable with new systems. But the nice thing that we found about leveraging QSC for a lot of this stuff, or QSys more appropriately, is that we already have hundreds of open architecture DSPs. So that general approach to, Raj, you mentioned configuration, and call it configurable technologies at this point because we're not doing Lua yet. That's down the road. It's an easy lift for people. They look at that and they say, oh, this looks very familiar to what I've dealt with from other open architecture systems. So I spent half a day and I'm now comfortable with this. So it was a pretty easy transition from that standpoint. So.
And again, follow along with Chris is that we were 100% Crestron. We started to make the change a little earlier because we started using QSC DSPs. But like I said, all of our rooms, we have almost 1,000 rooms on Crestron Fusion. So we started with QSC DSPs because of COVID. We had great lecture capture, as everyone did. Like here we are 3 years after, and we still talk about the same thing, how lecture capture was already in the room. So we had cameras and mics for the instructors, but then we realized we had no way for the students to engage. So that's when we started using more DSPs and miking the students, which meant we were putting in cores and NV32s. And then we said, well, why are we buying a separate control processor, name your own manufacturer, right? And a touch panel to control a device that already had that built in. So that was when we made the big change. Now I'll say, like, if we have a room that doesn't need that kind of audio, if you're talking about a huddle space with a sound bar or something on it, we've started using the Kramer RC keypads. And specifically because they had a web UI built into it, and like a virtual panel. So if you go to the IP address of the keypad, this is essentially why we picked that keypad, was because then we could put that link to that UI in Crestron Fusion Server so that our tier 1 support could still open up a virtual panel of what the user is seeing and see whether the TV was on or off. So in small rooms, we've started rolling those out. But just like you're saying, Chris, that as long as the panel looks the same, you know, that I think that's important, that if a user walks in, they're going to see the same UI on one panel versus the other, or the same, you know, on keypads, the button layouts are the same. It doesn't matter. They don't care. They just want to walk in and know that that big giant red easy button, whatever I'm thinking, when I hit that easy button, it's going to happen in this room or the same in that room. So.
I think which is a great point, Gary. I mean, you know, for us, you know, the challenges that we face. So traditionally, we are a Zoom campus. That means every space that we have is a Zoom room enabled space, whether it's a classroom, auditorium, study room. And one of the things that we encountered was, you know, not being able to get those panels. The nice thing is that being a Zoom system, we could then accommodate that to be anything else, whether it's an iPad, whether it's a third-party panel from Lenovo or anybody else, we could still integrate it into the system and provide a level of functionality for that space. Because, I mean, I'll be honest, there's a lot of spaces, non-classroom and auditorium spaces, but a lot of spaces outside of that, like training rooms and things like that, that we don't have product for yet. And we've been able to circumvent that by using these workarounds, by using third-party things. And to Chris Decter's point about panel getting obsolete from certain manufacturers with regards to Zoom updates, right? I mean, that's true as well too. I mean, you know, there are challenges associated with that. I mean, because being in an interconnected ecosystem, things that get updated will impact you, and things that you do may impact somebody else. And you know, with the Zoom Rooms approach or Teams Room approach with systems, I mean, you know, especially from a control side, you know, one thing that a lot of team members have heard me talk about, but there's idea of a digital debt, right? Where you want to make sure that you're up to date on everything that's interconnected and intertwined, because if you don't and you let that build up, then the end result will be, you know, you'll have systems or parts of the system that are inoperable completely, and that breaks everything down in the space. And you're absolutely right. End of the day, a lot of our faculty and users of the space, they want systems to work. And how do we do that? It's up to us. But as far as their experience is concerned, I mean, that stays consistent, right? So one way we're able to do that is the UI that's there for Zoom doesn't change no matter what panel we use. I mean, end of the day, I mean, whether it's a Crestron, iPad, you know, it could be anything else, that keeps it the same. But that does introduce some challenges on our end too, because now we have different systems that we have to manage. So it'll be interesting to see how other teams kind of, because, you know, it's nice to have a standard, but if you can't have that standard, then you have the exceptions. And how far do you take those exceptions? Because one thing that's not changing for all of us, I'm sure on the call, is additional resources and additional staffing and things like that. So we have to augment what we're doing with what we have.
I agree. So, you know, Chris and Gary talked about kind of leveraging hardware they already had in their rooms to sort of make a change. Gee, what did USC do to kind of respond to this? What is your guys's control built on, based on, and what have been the pros and cons of going the direction you did?
So I think that the hardware escapability, this is a really big help for us, because when we need to bring some room to, we have infantry stock hardware. So, and then let's say when we have school, they want to ask for us to spin up a room so that we can just update a program, create a room so that we get the AV basic control. And also this is kind of like the unexpected benefit for us, is because with the controller, it's very important for the entire campus. With the virtual control technology, we can install Datadog, so all kind of monitoring software to help us to do troubleshooting, and then also to do to diagnostic the network problem. So that's kind of an additional layer of benefit for us. And also, as Raj mentioned that earlier, so that we have a single plate, we can oversee all the program. That's kind of nice for us, for our approach. I think the con is when we do software updates, right? So we have to schedule very carefully. So for example, because we connected so many classrooms, so we have to find a windows without any class activities. So more of the time it's kind of at night. So this is the time we can work with the different teams to do the software update.
Yeah, and that also kind of shielded us a lot from the supply chain issues, having a virtual control processor and having 3 of them already fully maxed out. I mean, we were not beholden to a lot of the control processor problems that have plagued a lot of our peers, and that kind of circumvented and allowed us to expand out very quickly. As long as our devices are online and have an IP address on them, we can control that space and control that endpoint.
Well, I think that brings like, so at Crush on Masters this year, there was a higher ed kind of roundtable, and one of the hot topics there was, I'll people on both sides of I'll never go to centralized virtual control because one thing now can take down all of my rooms at the same time versus, so how is that, what has your experience been? And is there a reason to say, no, we feel better having, control on individual devices spread out around campus versus having all our eggs in one basket?
I want to add a little bit, Ryan. Yeah, so we do consider the situation. So, and I feel very lucky because we have a good relationship with different ITS teams. So we do have a daily backup of our server. So we try different scenario. Let's say when the system go down, we can roll back to the known well status in 15 minutes. So more of the AV system when the hardware dies, so 15 minutes to get a controller back. This seems like impossible, but we are able to bring back the system back to the guaranteed status within 15 minutes. So, but we not always do it, but just this is we testing different scenario when we have something go wrong. So we have a solution to fix the problem. But again, so also we kind of using the network. We're using the network infrastructure. So we have all the virtual control system and monitoring. Just allow us to not only to control the devices, we also can help us to monitor the device status.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to both. I mean, there's pros and cons for a distributed versus a centralized control. Centralized control, I mean, you have the ability to implement changes and scale out very quickly. I mean, of course, there's inherent risk. The good thing is that, from our leadership at USC, we're definitely in alignment with the, in terms of availability, uptime, 99.99%, 5 nines. With that being said, though, because of the centralized control strategy, we also have a seat at the table. So if there are any changes that a network team is planning or the security team is planning, they have to run that by us as well too. And same thing for us when we're doing something and implementing changes as well. So that's worked out well for us. And of course, the best practices in terms of, things go down, how do we mitigate from that? At least control goes down or anything, last known state is still operational. So if the systems are on, I mean, it'll still work. I mean, it's a simple encoder, a decoder system. But there are challenges, and one way around that is by having those best practices and making sure that we're implementing it. One thing I will say with centralized control versus decentralized, I mean, you'll have to make sure that you have best practices because you can't just be like, okay, I'm going to leave the system by itself. I'm not going to update it. If you have a few 500 rooms, I mean, for me to have physical engineers to walk to the space to even update a firmware or something else, I mean, that's asking a lot. I mean, I want it to be centralized where I can push an update, not have to be a pull system where I have to go and pull status from each one of these rooms. Each room has 5 to 10 different endpoints, and that'll just add up at that point.
All right, Chris, why is he wrong about that?
I was just about to say, Raj, you are so wrong, and here's why.
Yes.
I'm glad Raj and Chi are out there doing advanced stuff because they get to test stuff for me. This is great. I'm a little more old school in that sense. If it's up to me, every audio every bit of audio in the room is mono. I still set cameras to 720p. You know, I do a lot of stuff like that. You know, hey, VGA was great. VGA Sunrise is coming back. I remove buttons wherever I can. You know, I take all that stuff out because I don't need that, and I want to keep it as simple as possible. I still have a processor in every room, so even if I virtualize my my processor, if I have a, you know, when there's, you know, you can get the Crestron VC4 or the Extron VCA, QSys vCore. If I did that, I'm putting it in the room. Because I already mentioned that I don't control the PCs in a space. And so even though everyone uses that, and that is a critical component of an AV system in 2023, I don't control those. And so there's this kind of push-pull relationship there. I also don't control the network. And I trust the network as far as I can throw it. Yes, we all live on the network, we're on it all day, but that goes down, my God, what do I, you know, so it's panic mode. So granted, I have more managed network switches in the networking team, and they hate that, but still, I still want a processor in every room. So if that trunk line does die, and, you know, Raj, to your point, it stays in its last known state, it'll keep on operating because I'm assigning those IPs right there locally, and everything is still operating within its own little system. Hey, Zoom don't work, but I can't fix the internets. But at least then the system keeps operating, they can keep teaching. So I'm a little more old school in that. I see the value of centralized control. I probably, like everybody here 10 years ago, we all did these big building systems where, like, this great concept of I'm going to put in a single system that runs the whole building and you can route stuff any which way. When one end of that went down, and some of us found out the hard way that, like, when a Tessera Forte server goes down, it takes out the entire, anyway. AVB is a little like Token Ring in that sense. But I think we've all had that experience, and some of us are a little gun shy at this point. And, like, no, I want each room to be its own thing. So if that means I need 300 control processors, 300 physical control processors, even if that is, oddly enough, a PC running control processor software, I'm fine with that. I will put that extra expense, that extra rack space, that extra need for power and data in that space to do that. And then in 5 years from now, when USC is on to the next thing, then I'll go back and do the thing they did previously. After they've really laid the groundwork and hammered out all the problems, I'll just call Raj and Chi and be like, tell me how you did it, I'll do that. So yeah, I'm a little more old school in that sense. So a control processor in every room is great.
Well, Gary, break the tie for us then. Where should people be going?
You know, I think it depends on your relationship with networking, 100%. I know it's funny, our industry came from two fields. You either came from the IT area or you came from the library. And I feel like those folks that came from the library, right, they don't have that relationship with their IT, and they're never going to have that relationship because they were the library. Where universities that have come from IT know the IT. And I have IT folks on speed dial ready to go. So, man, I hate to waver, I hate to waffle, but I will say we are investigating doing centralized control for a new medical building that we're going to do. We're looking at it and seriously considering it. I just don't know that I'm ready to pull the trigger. Same with Chris. Like Raj, it makes perfect sense. I hate having folks have to go out and spend time going to a room, especially if it's on a regional campus or somewhere else where you have to drive an hour just to get into the room to update firmware or anything. So that kind of thing seems like it's been waiting in the wind for a long time. So I'd love to see that. I'm super scared. And it's great to see a giant university like USC doing that. I mean, that's really, it helps folks like me feel a little more comfortable about doing it. So I would say for now, I'm a processor in every room. I'm easily swayed to do some virtualized control. Hey, and listen, with this is that general fear of, we've had folks working with us in your department for a long time that are very comfortable programming X. And that idea of learning a whole new language, a whole new way of programming for something completely different is very scary for some folks. And you have to take that into consideration. Hopefully you have like one strong person that you can lean on that is okay programming. It turns out that QSC stole mine. You're welcome, QSC, QSys, wherever, for Josh Foster. But I think we have to take that into account. It's your team. Like, how comfortable is your team learning a whole new language for programming?
Yeah, no, I think Gary, that those are great points, and that's why I think it's good as an industry we have different options and opportunities, right? I mean, in terms of how we want to approach it, and that definitely plays into a factor that every situation and every university is unique in terms of their circumstances. But the biggest thing is that your staffing. I mean, how comfortable your staff is with regards to you know like doing something like this and also changing, right? I mean, having rooms with, you could have QSC and Crestron or Extron, and having staff trained in all three. I mean, because it is a challenging type of situation, and how do we accommodate for that? So, I mean, for us, we've been fortunate that from the ground up, we have the opportunity to build the right team here that can support what we're trying to do and push the boundaries in terms of where we want to go on the control side and AV over IP and all the other things that's going on, but especially on the control side. And a lot of it had to do with, from a team perspective, everybody in the team, I mean, at some point we have done programming ourselves. And then especially having a programmer on staff, what I'm saying, I mean, sorry to hear about Josh, Gary. I mean, that's a tough person to replace, but but that plays a huge factor. I mean, they're absolutely right. I mean, staffing, personnel, a huge factor.
So yeah, sorry, Chi, please go ahead.
So I just want to echo to Chris, earlier. So I in the question master, I talked to the different schools. Not every single school they have complete control on their network. So for example, with the university, the college, they outsource the IT. So the AV team will be very challenging to get support from the network team, right? This is so to understand to your network, and then to get control from the IT. This is very important to determine what direction you can go. And then also, yes, some of, even though you within the IT, but with your network security have a policy, you cannot one PowerShell. So also we're limited what you can do for control. Yeah, I just want to add this.
So obviously, AV over IP is the biggest elephant in the room in terms of working with networking and how that works. But I think we've been doing AV control things over the network a lot longer than that. I'm assuming all of you guys are still RS-232 end-to-end control where you guys are, or what's going on there? RS-485 still works?
I know.
I do everything over
no,
old Visca commands. It's great.
Yeah. Raj has his own. Raj has his own.
I have my
protocol.
own.
Yeah.
It's RS-233.
RS-233.
232.
It's
Just
one more.
a little bit
It's got
better.
one more.
One more
bit in
one
there.
more bit.
233.
So it sounds, just the context I'm hearing, like two different approaches. Chris talks about he's got more managed network switches in his AV builds than his networking team. And, where I come from, we run 100% on our college network for all of our control. And we have packets flying all over the place. So I know there's definitely a kind of, it depends on how your college works kind of feel to which is the better solution there. So what has been your guys' strategies on making sure that as you do control over IP, it's as reliable as control was when it was over a direct, RS-232 run from one thing to another?
So
Go ahead, Gary.
okay. I can tell you that we are first and foremost device specific. So our control processors and our touch panels will reside on our network. Anything controlled, a TV, actually AV over IP is 100% not on our business network. We do that on the private network. Dante, AES-67, all of those are all on a sub network. But as far as like controlling devices on our network, I don't know if your university has this or not, but we have students and they are bound and determined to mess up anything that they can find on our network. So if it's not high level secured, then we're not putting it on. Sony TVs, we love controlling Sony TVs over IP. I'm not putting it on our network. I'm putting it on a private network. But just like Crestron panels and Crestron processors, those are secure. I mean, if they can reside in a government facility, then they can reside on our network. So those items, yes, I'll put on a public network. Anything controlled that's not secure, there's no way I'm putting it out there.
Yeah, so
Yeah, that's a
we have a similar approach in the sense, like I said, I've got managed switches, so I get a trunk line from networking, so I can address all those VLANs. I could send any traffic I wanted to any other device, but I don't because it's not quite fun once you hit a building switch on that. And the networking team has been good to work with because they are willing to explore that, and they recognize this is coming at some point, and they'll light up 40 gig links for us all the time to send high bandwidth traffic around campus. But it's not something we do as a matter of course. As much as possible, like Gary said, I'd like to get devices on the network so we can then remotely support them, remotely control them, that sort of thing. But there are some out there that don't play nice, and I fired up, I think it was an NEC monitor the other day, and the only thing it will take is a hard-coded IP address, not even a reserved DHCP or a host name. So we had to punch that in using the little IR remote to get it to set the IP so we could log into it to the really basic web interface. I mean, it was like really, really like pulling teeth to get that one to go over the network properly, but we're just driving control to it, no content. So it is a challenge, and it is something that while I think we're laying the groundwork and we have the devices and the endpoints that can all do the IP enabled traffic, we're not driving that anything outside of the switch in each room. So that acts as a hardware, or a hard layer 3 switch at that point, basically blocking traffic. So
Yeah, and I think for us, it's pretty much all IP. I mean, it's predominantly IP. The only time, and that's IP for not just the control side, but also for the video signal, the audio signal, and we're sitting on the production network as well. The only segregation we have is a VLANs, and we segregate the traffic through that. The other thing is that, we are looking at doing things. So like, for example, if there's displays and things like that, so we'll have an encoder or a decoder, then through that, we can do RS-232 to those endpoints. So when need be, we are doing it, but things like screen control, I mean, we have the relay boxes that are then connected via relay, but that's talking over IP back to a control processor. So things like that, it's an and approach. I mean, where need be, we are doing, physical RS-232, a relay, contact closure, a lighting control, that's another example. If we have Lutron or something else, I mean, we're tying it in with RS-232 to do the scene presets and things like that. But, preferences, a next round of upgrade, we're going to do Dante amps. We want to be able to control those over a Dante network, then the things that we want to do with that. So where we can push it, we're going to push it towards the IP world.
Raj, just want to warn you, those aren't shipping. So good luck with that.
I know, right? It takes forever.
Then Rajji, how did you guys, you've got all of your traffic, control, audio, video, everything running on, like you said, the production network of the university. And that seems like an impossible lift for people I talk to. Like they would never be able to do all that. How did you guys go about making that a reality at USC?
It's a good question, and and she can also speak to this too as well. One thing I kick it off by saying is that what we did was we partnered with the manufacturers and we did a lot of stress tests for the systems first. The nice thing about USC is that it's a network. Once we prove the concept and the idea in one building, then to expand and scale out from there was very easy. And engaging with the right partners, because not only education for us on the IP and a network side, it's education for the network team in terms of what to expect when they are seeing AV traffic. So there's a lot of time that we spend, and she can talk about that with the network team in terms of educating them what it means with network traffic. What are JPEG 2000? What are the different compression codecs? What are the throughputs we're talking about in terms of bandwidth, in terms of having a multi-MAC exemptions for port? So we can definitely talk about that. Chi, I don't know if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So when we go through this, we went through a couple of processes. So at the very beginning, I kind of gathered all the network requirements to the network team to have a discussion what kind of infrastructure required is in terms of their firewall, network switch, all line up to make sure that we can run the AV over IP. And then when we go to the next stage, we're going to have, send gear to our labs. So we have a labs to kind of duplicate the actual production environment. So we tested in our lab to simulate the AV over IP over multiple buildings. So after the network team, they fully understand how they manage the network switch, then we start to roll out to multiple buildings. This is how we go through step by step with the manufacturer and also with our IT team to plan the rollout. Fortunately, this happened during the pandemic, so we did not have any traffic on campus. This gave us a lot of time to do troubleshooting. But also, stress test is very important. So because that's kind of really stressful to make sure that the data is not going to crush the entire network. So because when you put your AV gear and multicast on the network, so when you have any mistake, that will be a really big damage for the entire university. So I'm glad we went through this approach step by step with the network team to figure it out.
Yeah, as far as the testing part, I mean, one thing I will say, I mean, during the pandemic, I mean, we literally took decoders to the network closet and connected it physically into the switcher. And then that way, from the control side, we wanted to test, we had to work with the firewall team because there's a lot of nuances with the virtual control, because that resides on a server VLAN, and talking to individual AV VLANs across multiple buildings and campuses, and testing that out, that just took a little bit. So stress testing is important, manufacturer partnership is important, and you educating your partners internally, the firewall team, security team, and network team. That's important because, again, as I said, once it's been certified and you can do it and they know how to do it, scaling out is the easy part, actually.
Raj, that's an excellent point. I'm lucky enough. Let me rephrase that. I was aggressive enough to steal an empty classroom, so I set it up as a test lab. So testing stuff like that in an actual production environment is critical. And then working with the networking team, with the IT team, I gave them, here's a bunch of stuff. Here are things I am using. Like I said earlier, I'm not using this right now to fire 10 gigs across campus, but 5 years from now, I might want to do that. So let's figure this out so that when that day comes and someone says, hey, the president's giving a speech over in this building, can we stream overflow to these other 3 spaces? Then the answer would be yes, because we have that set up and we've tested it, as opposed to, well, maybe we can try. That's never a good response. So I have found that some folks on the networking team are great to work with. Here you go. Here's this type of switches we're using. Here's the type of encoders, decoders, et cetera, that we're using. And they're happy to kind of play along with that. Others are a little more skeptical, which is fine, because the goal of every network administrator is to keep people off the network. So if they're successful in that, then, it's a good day. Well, Chi, like you said, having no one on campus made it a lot easier, but it's not necessarily a great way to test it. It's like balancing the audio in a 200-seat auditorium and there's no one in the room. It's like, I'm going to take my best guess at this, but you fill 200 people in here, it's going to sound very different. So same sort of thing with the network. I will also say, and there's been some chat going, so thanks for the questions in there. Our network team has a fantastic topology for campus. We have VLANs set up. We have a dedicated AV VLAN. We have the Gary, as you mentioned, the friendly student VLAN. They get put in the secure bucket over here where they get like port 80 and nothing. So it's helpful to have that structure already. If you have a flat network topology sort of thing, then might want to start having those conversations as to how you want to structure that to allow for these things, because more and more devices are coming with only an RJ45 on the back. And you'll need to have some capability to provide and maintain that. So working with your networking team now is important. I know, Frank, you were mentioning that find out what their favorite drink is and get a bottle of that for them. But I always like to phrase it as like, go find your network admins now and make friends with them, because if you don't, when you plug stuff in, they're going to find you. And that was the experience of my engineer who just retired at UW. He got an NVX box. This was 3 or 4 years ago, all prior to COVID. He plugged in the network to see what happened. It was about 4:30, and he left and went home. When he came back the next morning, there were 3 network admins standing outside his door and wanted to know, what the hell did you just plug in? What is it doing? Because it's messed with all our stuff, and they had to shut down the port in his office. So don't do that approach, but work with them because they need to be your friends.
So
Yeah,
Gary,
I agree
if
with
you're
that.
sorry, go ahead, Chief. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I agree. So to notify the network team, to make friends with them, that's very important, right? So because every single device as you connect to a network, they do have some impact, right? So if you we can get coordinated, that's really cool. And then I can see that in the future we'll have more application. We're going to overflow video, audio content between different buildings, and then we're also looking for more better solution, more scalable to make this happen.
Yeah, I agree with Christopher and Chi. I mean, it's great. There is like a leap of faith, right? Because every manufacturer, they guarantee that they've tested it in their sandbox, but they haven't tested it in your sandbox, right? And when oh, it works great, but when it comes on campus and it's when it's in your environment that when you really get to stress test things with all that traffic flowing around, and we segment things the same way. We have AV VLANs. We've also added, and I don't know if anyone else has done this, we also have an AV virtual forwarding route, VRF, virtual forwarding and routing. I don't know if you guys have dealt this, which is kind of a grouping, and it allows us to, we actually have to, there's an additional VPN we do to gain access to components individually on the network. So it's not, so students have access, or if people have access to a hardwired VLAN or a hardwired connection, they would still have to VPN in to be able to talk to these devices directly and administer them in certain cases. But
yeah. It's the interesting part of this conversation is how quickly talking about network traffic for control becomes talking about network traffic for AV over IP, right? Like the thing is converged in a way that there's almost the same conversation has to take place. So yeah. Gary, now in your sort of, like we could do this, we could do that. Have you been sold today, or what's your conclusion?
I really want to try centralized control. So now I will have to get mining management on board too. The fear of one thing going down and killing multiple rooms or an entire building. Obviously, we're gonna have redundancy. It's a brand new building, so it should be brand new networking, brand new network switches. What a great time to try to do that. I think it would still be control, so I would still have control, but if I'm doing any AV over IP, I still have that fear of running that over a business network. But this would be the time to do it. So let's say I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah. All right.
Within a building.
Door number 2.
So let me.
Yeah.
Door number 2. I'm going to open it.
All right. Well, then starting with you and going down the line, is everybody going to end up there? Is this conversation we're having here will be obsolete 5 years from now because nobody will be talking about doing individual control processors in a room? Or is that not as inevitable as it sounds?
No, I think we're still playing it conservative with processors per room. Don't get me wrong. I mean, every piece of equipment you're buying has a network connection on it, though. I mean, there's no getting around, allocating a drop for every piece of equipment. As Chris says, we have pieces where we're still running RS-232 to control the unit, but guarantee you it has a network connection on there for firmware updates and feature updates and possibly control. I mean, we have some brand new AVR cameras that don't respond as quick to, let's say, a network PTZ command as they do to an RS-232 PTZ command. So there's some nuances there that we test through and find the most optimal configurations, right? So then, yeah, kind of Chris, Raj, Chi, what do you think? Chris, are you going to stay where you are? Raj, are you comfortable that everybody's coming your way? And what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, so my take on that always is, and there's, people could argue another way, but like when you look at IT in general and AV and IT converging or AV becoming IT or IT becoming AV, one thing I always tell people is AV is a very bottom-up approach and IT is a very top-down approach. So in the IT world, it is going to go towards, it's going to converge into one control processor. We're already seeing that with Zoom, Teams, and everything else. It's centralized and then it propagates out from there. So it is going to go to that point, and to Arvi's point here, I mean, now that doesn't mean that there is no space for a localized control for things like that. I mean, there's always space for that, but it's going to push more towards that. I mean, we're already there right now for what we do, for everything that we're doing here. But in general, I see a direction going towards that.
All right, my favorite question, Chris. Why was everything he just said wrong?
Actually, I was going to thank Raj for the segue there, but so yeah, like I said, we're baby stepping into it, and this is something that I want to make sure stuff works. I want to make sure that's reliable and it's going, because fundamentally our job as AV/IT professionals is to remove friction for the transition or to the transfer of information. That's all we're here to do. Now, whether that's an email or that's a PowerPoint or that's a Zoom call, we're just here to remove friction and grease the wheels to allow information to flow. So if I can get something that's more reliable and it's on the network or not on the network, whatever that process is what I'm going to leverage. I'm glad that Raj and Chi are working on the, like, hey, they're way out there, so I can look back on that in a few years and try it out. But it also fantastic, plug here for HETMA, but I'm glad to see so many different schools on this call, because that means we have peer institutions we can reach out to when we're doing this, or more importantly, when your network director wants to know who else is doing this crazy stuff. Hey, look at these guys, talk to these, so you can have those conversations. And that's clearly where things are going. I saw something the other day where someone was talking about QSYS control, and they said, well, there's no RS-232 ports. I'm like, first of all, you're wrong. And secondly, even if the device itself that you're looking at doesn't have that, you can get the little breakout box. And Raj mentioned they use ones. I think you guys use the global cache ones, but there's a bunch of them out there that convert that information from one to the other. So I will say, and somebody, I can't see who it was in the chat, someone brought up their concerns about display manufacturers. Yeah, if you guys haven't run into the display manufacturers who, when you power down the device, it turns off the network port. Hey, thanks.
No.
Yeah, I've run into that. Did a bunch of them years ago where it turned off both the serial port and the LAN control, and the only way to turn it back on was with an IR blaster. Oh my God, that was a pain in the butt. Anyway, but I do want to throw in a quick plug here. So Raj mentioned that relationship between AV and IT, and I think that's really what we're straddling here. Yeah. On Friday, a bunch of weirdos that I know called the AV Super Friends are going to be doing a discussion about the death of AV. So join us on Friday as part of the HETMA conference.
That's a good plug. So there was a comment in here about, well, I don't do individual processors, but I have, a processor in a closet and it can do 10 rooms on its own. Is that which side does that fall in? Is that a step through way to start moving towards something centralized? Getting comfortable with the idea of 10 rooms on a processor before my whole campus on a processor?
Yeah, I would definitely say kudos to Crestron for, what was that, the 3 series when they started doing that? The whole idea of, hey, we're going to have one processor, but you can run 10 different programs on it. And I think they were talking about in the same room, you could have AV and one program and lighting on the other, but really what you could do then is 10 rooms on that. So what's the difference of it being a processor versus a server? And QSYS will tell you there's, their Core 110 is nothing but a Dell server, right? That's all it is, just a server running software. So kudos to Crestron for years ago thinking about this and then really rolling out VC4 to get that rolling. So I think it was the first, the first virtualized control was the processor that could run 10 rooms.
Yeah. And if we do have the, the CEO of Control Concepts on here, and his question in the chat is, how important is the availability of proven modules, drivers, and plugins in the selection of a control platform or third-party device?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's crucial. I mean, we want to go with, we're managing enterprise-wide solutions, so we want systems and products that have enterprise level support through partnerships in the industry, right? And that's why, for us, it was crucial. When we looked at it, and I think there's more value in that, especially because, end of the day, we all can't know everything, and to have partners that we can lean on that can provide a guidance and assistance like that, it's key.
Yeah, and I'll get this dig in one more time. Also, so your QSYS module should be pretty good because I know one of the guys programming it. Chris, Larry, Darling, you're on the call. You know who I'm talking about. Thanks again.
That's an excellent point. There's a lot of stuff out there that's just like, hey, this module looks like it has the it identifies the model right next to the one I'm trying to, and then you're spending 3 days messing with it to try to get it to, yeah, it's a treat. So I know, like, you can take the complete opposite method from Raj's former life, where Extron said, we provide the drivers and they are ones that we've written and we've vetted and here are all the commands, and it's a very restricted environment, but darn well those things are going to work. So, there's definitely an advantage to having that sort of proven and vetted resource available.
So,
Absolutely.
and then as we come towards the end, Chris, you mentioned, people inside HETMA being resources to talk to about doing these sorts of things, right? Like Raj actually helped us get our first, we have a satellite campus on VC4 and he helped us get that going at the time. So both inside and outside HETMA, where have you all gone to get assistance when looking or evaluating, making changes in your control systems?
I think for us, both inside and outside HETMA, I mean, we've gone to all our different groups that are part of HETMA, as well as outside with different manufacturers. And one thing I always tell folks who are part of HETMA and our peer institutions is that, manufacturers want to talk to us. I mean, it's in their interest to talk to us, especially platforms like HETMA provides that opportunity and engagement, and especially the different rooms and everything else. And, engage with them, test with them, and try it out. I mean, every manufacturer, whether it's Crestron with VC4, whether it's a Dell server or QSys or Extron, I mean, they have solutions that they can offer that solves all our problems. I mean, and we engage with all of them in ensuring that we can test those control options out. And I'm sure same for everyone else here as well too on the panel.
Yeah, and specifically, Ryan, I would say I would direct people towards the HETMA community. If you're on this call, you're aware of HETMA, so join the HETMA community and ask these questions. Always point to James King's fantastic Slack for bothering people with oddball questions. It's a great way to do it. And I bother, these good guys called the AV Super Friends. So all the time, constantly, nonstop with strange questions. Things, I'll start phrases like bad idea or worst idea, and then I'll lay out something I'm thinking of and, go from there. So yeah, leverage your resources, stealing and sharing. Steal ideas from those who are doing it better and share your ideas with others. Great way to do it.
Cool.
Yeah,
Well, thank you guys. You want to, sorry, go ahead.
Nope, that's it. No,
Well, then,
and don't forget about your integrators, right? So we have a great group of peers here, but like I came from the integrator world, so I have friends out there. Like, don't be afraid to reach out to them. We're paying them money. Let them help us out.
great. Well, thank you all. Let's go down the row. How if people wanted to get a hold of each of you to continue that conversation, get help, or tell you that you're wrong about everything you've said, how would they go about reaching out to you? How about you, Chi?
Oh yeah, my email is chihang@usc.edu. You're gonna put it on a chat as well.
Cool, that'd be great. Raj?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, if anybody wants to reach me, I'm on LinkedIn or Twitter, just search Raj Singh USC, or my email is raj.singh@usc.edu.
And what was that Twitter handle again?
Oh, it's at Raj Singh CA.
Okay, but didn't you have at RS233 at one point?
I did, but I don't know. I kind of lost that one. It's like, I tried to get it, but it's one of those things where it's kind of like HETMA, like, we're looking for at HETMA. Somebody has that.
All right, nice. Gary?
It's very funny. I've had a couple of hits on LinkedIn already. So kudos to everyone that knows technology. I put my email address in the chat, garcummi@iu.edu. Also on LinkedIn.
And Chris?
I'm a social media idiot, so good luck finding me anywhere. You can find me on LinkedIn by spelling my name. You're going to find one Christopher Decter out there. If there's another one, let me know. I will track him down and kill him. Email cdechtercdector@uyo.edu. I'll put it in the chat for those of you who don't listen to that. Also, AV Super Friends again.
How and where would we find them?
So I'm going to direct everyone over to avsf.live, but avsuperfriends.com, do a search for AV Super Friends. We're all over the place. Search for that. You'll find us.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate the conversation, and everybody who came to listen. Now you know who you can to go contact and fire questions at, and talk about what the future of control looks like on your campus. And with that, I have accomplished my mission of ending this exactly on time. So when you get your survey, you say, Ryan finished it on time. He did good.
2 stars.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.